How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to In with Denoux. It is good to be back. I am so sorry about last week. I know 2 weeks ago I just said I'm going to try to make sure that I have an episode every week for y'all. Had some issues with the software, got it all figured out. By the time I got it recorded, I just figured we'd wait till, the following week to get it uploaded. So I really do apologize. Thank y'all for hanging in there with me. Now that I have everything worked out, I'm going to make some episodes ahead of time to make sure that I have some, ready to go. But I am excited because in the next couple weeks, we are going to have a new guest on. So I am really, really excited for that. A friend of mine, she is awesome, and y'all will meet her soon. We're going to record this week, and hopefully, we'll be able to get that episode out in the next couple of weeks. So I wanted to jump right in. So a couple weeks ago, I did an episode for our 1 year anniversary and I kind of just ranted. If you listen to it, thank you for listening to the whole thing. If you got through the whole thing, it was kind of a therapy session for me. I kind of decided I was just going to be real about being thankful for the podcast this year and everything that has come with that. The new people that I've met through posting videos on TikTok and things like that, all of the people that I consider great friends and family who have listened and really enjoyed the pod. I'm really grateful to those that listen every week, that have commented and reviewed and subscribed to the YouTube channel. I really am grateful. And also just kind of shared some of my hardships the last year. I didn't go into super detail about everything, but just some of the hard feelings and difficulties that I've had. And when I was reflecting on that, I ended the episode talking about Mark 2, the story about the friends lowering their paralyzed friend to Jesus. And I kind of thought I've just been dwelling on that story a lot. And, we had some baptisms at church about 3 weeks or a month ago. And that story was just on my mind, on my heart of how do we bring people to Jesus. And I thought maybe I would just do an episode and kind of dwell on what does that look like today? Because obviously that story is beautiful and there's a lot of things we can pull from it, but the specifics of that story will not really happen today, mainly because Jesus isn't here with us physically, obviously, and we're not going to be breaking people's roofs and things like that. But I was just kind of thinking, man, what does that look like for us today? Even if it's not physically bringing someone to the feet of Jesus like they did in the Bible, what will that look like for us today? And so I want to walk through that. This story is about a group of friends whose names we don't even know. It's not like a famous sermon. There's no real recorded words from them, no leadership titles or anything from this group of friends. There's no real like spotlight on them after this, no recognition, just four friends in this story. And I honestly believe that some of the most Christ-like behavior in all of the scriptures come from these four unnamed friends because they had no worry except for getting their friend to Jesus, right? Jesus is teaching in a crowded house. I'm just kind of going to walk through the story, not reading it, but just kind of giving the highlights of the story. Jesus is teaching in this crowded house. The word has spread about him. People are packed into this house wanting to get in front of him. The doorways are blocked, the windows are crowded. There's no way in, right? But everybody wants access to this man, Jesus. And so then you have these four men showing up and they're carrying their paralyzed friend. And immediately they see the problem that we've just walked through, right? There's no room to get in just yourself, let alone bringing someone in on a mat who is paralyzed. So before we get into the friends, I want to start with the crowd because I think when we read this story, we kind of assume that the crowd is neutral, but I don't think necessarily they are, right? The crowd becomes the first obstacle standing between this hurt man, this man who needs healing, and Jesus. And I think that that can be true today. And when I say that the crowd is neutral, I'm more so speaking metaphorically for us today, right? The crowd. Sometimes the crowd isn't evil, it's just indifferent, right? If we think about it, no one in that house intentionally is, blocking this guy from getting healed. In their mind, they're not like, let's crowd in so this guy can't get to Jesus and get healed. They didn't plan that out. It was just that everyone is focused on themselves, right? The crowd is focused on themselves. They want to get to Jesus. They want to get what they need when they need it, right? They want a good seat. They want to hear Jesus. They want their own needs met. And because everyone is focused on themselves, no one is noticing this man and telling each other, hey, let's move out of the way so that this man can get healed, right? They are so enamored with Jesus and the healing they might get, or the food that he might create out of nothing, the wine they might get, whatever it may be that they're focused on. Maybe they just want to hear the words. Maybe they want to get healed. Maybe they want to see a miracle. Whatever the case may be, they want their own needs met. So no one notices this man. And I think that this can describe modern Christianity sometimes, right? We love to come and hear the good word. We love to come and hear the sermons and the great analogies that the preacher may have that Sunday. We love to worship and sing the beautiful songs. We love conferences and podcasts like this, and we love theology and learning things so that we can impress other people. But sometimes, somebody is suffering right outside the door or maybe even inside the door while we're enjoying the experience. The crowd in this story wasn't hostile, they were just occupied, right? And that's why I say that it's neutral. It's not that it's evil. It's not even that it has bad intentions. It's just they're occupied. And occupied people can become obstacles without even realizing, right? And I think one question we have to ask ourselves if we're Christians is, have I become part of that crowd, right? That's not doesn't have bad intentions, not evil, but maybe it's just distracted in our own edification and what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? Have we become part of the crowd? Am I so focused on my own spiritual growth that I forget to help someone else grow? Right. And maybe you're in a position where you need someone to help you grow. Right. So maybe you're that person that is trying to get through the crowd and trying to get in front of Jesus. Am I so focused on getting fed that I've forgotten to help feed someone else? Because the kingdom of God obviously was never meant to be just consumers in the pews, right? Just come, take, leave, take, leave. And I think sometimes that is what it can be, but it's about, disciples making other disciples, adult disciples who are now eating that solid food. And we got to remember that there's some that are still, taking the milk and haven't got to that solid food yet, and we can help them get there. Okay, so the crowd. So now let's talk about the friends, the heroes, the four friends. What's interesting is that Mark doesn't tell us much about them at all. We don't know their names, their occupations, their backgrounds, how they met, how their friends are some of them related, are some of them brothers, cousins, whatever. We don't know how long they've known this man that they're trying to get to the feet of Jesus. All we know is that they carried him. And that might be enough. That's enough to know that they are heroes for their friend. Because sometimes the greatest thing that you can ever do, for God isn't, or for someone else isn't just preaching a sermon. It's carrying someone. And I don't just mean physically like in this story. I think sometimes we underestimate the preaching of just presence, right? Is that our preaching or our sharing of our faith doesn't have to be fancy words or some lesson or some great act or someone knowing our name or what we do or where we came from. It can just be the presence, being a friend to someone, showing love for someone, the ministry of showing up, the ministry of, answering your phone or calling someone back when you see that they've called, of sitting and being with someone and just listening to them, of just checking in, sending that check-in text of how someone is doing, that preaching of refusing to disappear, on someone. Those things don't get celebrated as much as someone singing a beautiful song or preaching a beautiful sermon or whatever it may be. And obviously those things are important. And I'm not saying if you do those things, they're bad. But in addition, if you're a minister, if you're a pastor, if you're, a worship leader, whatever, remember that the small things can be just as big, if not bigger, than the great message that you preach or the great song that you sing or whatever it may be, that check-in text or that asking someone how they are, or, after the service is over, if someone looks like they're down, asking what's wrong, asking what's on their mind, that can be bigger than any act that's done on stage in front of someone else. It doesn't get celebrated that much. No one really posts about those little moments, or shares Instagram reels, about a check-in text. But they can change someone's day. They can change someone's life. And so I just wanted to share a little bit because, and hopefully this kind of ties in and makes sense to everyone, because as I was dwelling on the last episode and sharing a lot of things, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail again about this past year, but I did want to be vulnerable with y'all and just let you know that, during a lot of the low parts of, this last year, it was the first time that I really dealt with like serious, suicidal thoughts and self-harm stuff, and like planning stuff out, and to a degree that was like scary to me. And I think I've shared, that Jordan especially, and my sister, Jordan and my sister, were huge of just, every day, every night, like checking in. There was, a number of times where, Jordan just stayed on the phone with me till late, late at night just to make sure I was good. Like, you know, I'm staying on with you till you go to sleep, like that kind of thing. So, and because it was the first time that I had dealt with that, when I was thinking back on it, like, because I've been journaling and trying to do a better job of writing out what I'm feeling, and letting myself feel things and working my way through them, like with God. And so I found myself kind of feeling like ashamed of that portion of like dealing with suicidal thoughts and self-harm stuff. And so I started looking into the scriptures, and it was cool because there's a ton that I could go through. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I wrote these out just to share, or I typed these out just to share for this episode, because I was like, man, like, why am I feeling so ashamed? Like, I kind of knew I felt ashamed just because it's like a heavy thing. It's something that obviously, if you go through with something like that, it's something you can't come back from. And so, as a Christian, it creates this tension of, if someone, does commit suicide, like, what happens? Like, can they be forgiven of that? Can they go to heaven? Can go to, and I'm not here to answer that question. I don't really know the answer to that question. Only God really knows the exact answer to that question. But I did find comfort in some scriptures where I found that this isn't uncommon even in the scriptures. And so I just wanted to read, I think I have like 4 examples here of men that experience this type of thing. So in Numbers 11:15, Moses is overwhelmed and he asks God, please kill me at once. In Jeremiah 20:14, Jeremiah is in deep emotional exhaustion. And this is the one I kind of related to the most this past year. And, he's in this deep emotional exhaustion, and he cries out to God, cursed be the day that I was born. In 1 Kings 19, verse 4, Elijah is overcome with fear, and he said, it is enough now, O Lord, take away my life. And in Job 3, verse 11, Job is dealing with unbearable pain, and he cries out, why did I not die in the womb? And the point that I want to make here is that, the Bible isn't just a story of heroes. Like, we're talking about these heroes as these friends, but the Bible isn't a story of just strong heroes, but it's broken people just like us, right? And a God who never abandoned them. So if you're feeling like exhausted or lost, or if you're in pain, you feel like you have no strength left to give, just know that, these men that were just mentioned, and there's a lot more examples. This is just 4 examples of 4 great men of God stood in that same darkness that maybe you feel, and yet God lifted them up when they couldn't move forward on their own, right? So I just want to encourage you that God, doesn't see your life as like on hold. Like, if you feel like my life is on hold because of this situation or that situation, which I felt a lot this past year, that God doesn't look at you as like you're on hold, or you're lost, or your life is over. Um, that feeling of whatever it is for you, that emotional baggage or pain or fear, or feeling overwhelmed, that feeling isn't the end of your story. And, the only way it can be the end of your story is if you succumb to those temptations of, wanting to end your life. And so I just encourage you, if you're feeling that, to talk to somebody. If you feel like you don't have someone to talk to, please contact me. Like, even if I don't know you, I'd rather you contact me than not have anyone to talk to. But, God holds our final chapter. He knows what our final chapter is. So allow him to help you get there, get to your final chapter, and the one that he has intended for you. So I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to share that because, without a group of friends like this man had, like, who knows where he would have been. And I know that's how I felt this past year. And there's a lot of other people I could point to, but Jordan and my sister were the main two. And this story is four. I could certainly name a ton more that helped me. So if you're listening to this and you've been someone that's been there for me, I really do appreciate you. And I know I shared some people last episode as well. But anyways, back to the story. I'm sure that this man had those times where he was in pain, where he was exhausted, where he was confused, where he was angry. And, you know, I'm sure these men were there to carry him emotionally, not just physically, to Jesus. But before they even knew who Jesus was, I'm sure these friends were there for him. And that's why I bring up my sister and Jordan, all these other people checking on me and carrying me emotionally when I needed that. Okay, so we have the crowd that we talked about, we have the friends that we talked about, and now I want to talk about the roof, the the escape hatch where they couldn't get in through the front door, they couldn't get in through the windows, so they went through the roof. And it's crazy, right? The crowd blocks the entrance. The friends could have left and been like, "Sorry, man, maybe we'll catch him another day." And I think maybe that's what a lot of us would tend to do, right? Like, if there's this crazy obstacle that seems impossible, like, okay, let's wait till another day, or we'll figure it out another time. We tried, but they didn't leave, right? They climbed to the top of this roof. They start digging through the roof. They didn't think about how absurd or crazy they might look. They are literally tearing apart someone's roof. And I just imagine sitting, like, the big crowd that's in the room, and, dirt and clay or whatever it is that the roof is made of starts falling, and everybody looks up, and there's noise, there's confusion, there's chaos, and sunlight breaks through. There's a hole, there's a man starts looking through the hole, and people start descending. It's like, what is going on? It wasn't subtle, right? It wasn't polite, even. It wasn't convenient. This was desperation, right? And I think that, you know, real love doesn't stop at inconvenience. And that's a bitter lesson I had to learn this past year too, is that did someone actually ever love you if they just stop at inconvenience, or stop at fear, or run away from a difficult conversation, or, whatever the case may be? The roof stands between someone and Jesus, then and now, and for some people it's addiction or anxiety, or, church hurt, like we discussed in one of our series, or shame or pride, disappointment, prayers that feel like they're unanswered, intellectual questions that people just can't get past and they can't figure out. And so they don't want to come to Jesus. It's, depression, it's whatever it is. Everybody has this roof that they either have to dig through or they have to leave. And so the question is, are you willing to break through the roof? And are you willing to break through the roof with somebody, to go along that journey with somebody? So I want to talk about some of the reasons why I think we don't do this. We don't carry people, right? Why don't we do it more often? I want to go, I'm sure there's a ton more reasons, but I'm going to go through 4 reasons why I think maybe we don't do this. I think the first one is fear. Uh, what if they reject me? Like, what if it doesn't go perfectly? And so they push back, and they say, why'd you even do that? Maybe it turns out not the way, we think about all the ways it could go wrong. And so we just have this fear and we just don't do it. We play it safe. Like we said, we'll come back another day, or we'll do it a different way. I don't want to look crazy, whatever the case may be. So fear. I also think busyness, right? We don't have time. I think it's become, especially amongst Christians. And when I say this gently. I don't say this as like, it is true that we all have lives. We all have, jobs. We all have family and friends, and some of us have kids, and whatever the case may be. But I think it has become a little bit too comfortable as Christians, like using these as, you know, reasons not to check in on somebody, especially if you consider someone a really great friend. And like I said, it is true that we all have lives. And so it's not like we're going to be chit chatting every day, all through the day, but don't let busyness get in the way of helping someone get to the feet of Jesus, especially if you know they're going through something. Don't let busyness get in the way of helping someone get to Jesus's feet. The third reason I would say is comfort, right? We don't want the emotional cost, right? I know that this is something that I've been dealing with in the sense that, and this has come up a few times in my adult life where I've realized that I have this fear of starting something new because of all these past failures. And when I say failures, I don't even necessarily mean on my part, but it just hasn't gone the right way. Right. And so I'm like, well, if I don't start something new, if I don't make a new friend, if I don't, go after this or that, then I can't get hurt when it goes wrong. Or if that person leaves or this person rejects me or whatever the case may be. And it's that not wanting to get pushed out of our comfort zone. And that comes in a lot of different ways. Like the way I just shared, it could be something different for you, but we don't want that emotional cost. And even sometimes it's like for someone else, right? Like I don't want to pray for that person every day because then I'll have this hope. And then if they don't come to God or if they don't, want to work out the situation and I don't get that, that resolvement that I want. So I'm just going to ignore it. I'm not going to pray for that person. I'm not going to invest emotionally. And that falls into comfort as well. And the last one I would say is cynicism. If I help this person come to Jesus, they're going to reject him anyways. They're not going to change this or that of their in their life. And I think Satan loves all four of these things, but I think especially this one of like even though the things we've changed from or we thought like, oh, I could never change that, and God has changed our heart and our minds, like we don't believe it could be done for that person, even if it's someone we love. And so we have this cynicism, and none of them sound like the way that you now, if you say cynicism or comfort or whatever, like they sound bad, but the way that we justify, sometimes it doesn't sound sinful or bad. It sounds reasonable, but reasonable excuses still leave people outside of the house. The dude would still be paralyzed if his friends didn't get through that cynicism or discomfort, or busyness or fear, then dude would still be on the mat paralyzed. And so we have to push past these things if we truly love people. Okay, so we talked about the crowd, we talked about the friends, talked about the roof. Now I want to talk about the mat. Something that's interesting, and it's going to sound kind of weird, but like the friends don't carry Jesus to the man, right? They carry the man to Jesus. And that's important because I think sometimes we confuse the two, right? Like we're not the savior. We're not the healer. We're not the answer. We're just the carriers, right? And I think that's actually freeing of these things that we talked about just a second ago of like busyness and fear and comfort and all these things, is that we're just bringing people to Jesus. We're not the ones healing them or fixing them or whatever. That's not our role and that's not our job. And I think sometimes we can exhaust ourselves with trying to do the work that Jesus needs to do in that person's life, in that person's heart. You can't, not even that you try to do, you can't. You can't. We're not called to do that. We're called to help carry people to Jesus, not continually carry them. These friends, they can't carry this man through life. That's why they're bringing him to Jesus so he can get his legs back. And we have to think about that spiritually too. We can't carry people. Jesus handles the healing. Jesus handles the conviction, the transformation, and your job is to help people get close to encounter him, get close to him so they can encounter his power. And so when you think about that, think about who is on this mat, like who in your life is on this mat that you need to carry to Jesus. I think every listener, everyone that's listening right now should stop and think of one name. Who's on that mat? Who have you stopped praying for, stopped believing in? Who have you stopped, reaching out to because, you have all blue text in your, in your iPhone. And really what all that means is who have you given up on, right? And maybe they're one more reach out away, one more call away, one more text away. I'm trying not to get the Chingy song in my head right now. Gone away. But yeah, maybe it's a prayer, maybe it's a call, maybe it's an act of kindness, maybe it's a tough love conversation. We don't know. We don't know. Like we just have to reach out. We have to be willing to carry it. The friends didn't know what Jesus would do exactly either. They just knew that maybe this man could help our friend, and they just showed up and carried him, right? And maybe you're listening and you're like, maybe you're sitting here and you're like, I don't have the ability to do that. Then maybe you're the paralyzed one. And I don't say that in a negative way at all. We've all been the paralyzed one that needed to be carried at some point in our lives. So some of us aren't the friends right now. We're the man on the mat that needs to get lowered to Jesus. Maybe you're the one, like I was just saying for me this past year, that you're the one that's exhausted. You're the one that's hurting, discouraged, you're struggling, and maybe you're embarrassed that you need help, right? Like I can't imagine, this man, I'm sure he's super grateful for his friends, but maybe there was some embarrassment of like, no, 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 like don't break through the roof. Like maybe he was the one saying, let's come back another day, or let's just wait outside until it clears out or whatever. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. The man eventually, even if he was feeling that way, allowed his friends to carry him, allowed his friends to be kind of crazy and break through a roof and lower him. And that's humility. That's humility. Sometimes faith isn't, carrying somebody else. It's allowing someone to carry you, allowing someone to correct you, you know, allowing someone to say what they need to say, and you listen, or you talk it out, work it out, whatever the case may be. And that's hard too. That's just as hard sometimes as the ones doing the carrying. Okay, so to me, the most amazing part of this story, is Jesus sees this man, right? Like after they've lowered him to Jesus, Jesus sees the man, but the text, of the story in Mark 2 says that he saw their faith, not his faith, not just the faith of the paralyzed man or just the faith of the friends there, the faith of the friends, the faith of the one on the mat, but specifically the friends, their faith mattered, not just the faith of the one who needed the healing. Their effort mattered, their persistence mattered, their sacrifice and willing to look crazy and break through, you know, that ceiling. And just imagine that, like when you're carrying someone, like God sees your faith. He sees, the work that you're putting in, and we're not doing it for recognition, but just know that God sees those things that you're doing that are maybe unseen by others. Okay, so in closing here, I think there's two kinds of people that are listening. Like we talked about, people who need to carry and people who need to be carried. And I just want to encourage you that whichever one you are, whether you're someone that needs to help carry someone else or you need to be carried right now, don't resist it. Pray about it, humble yourself out, because Christianity has never been a solo journey. And the times where I've been the furthest away or the lowest is when I continually try to do things solo. It's people carrying other people to Jesus and then allowing Jesus to work on them. It's what the church is supposed to be. It's what friendship and discipleship and brotherhood and sisterhood is supposed to be. And I think the greatest tragedy isn't that people are hurting. It's that there are Christians standing by that are refusing to pick up their corner. Have you ever been like helping somebody move, or maybe you're setting up an event or whatever, and there's like a big rug or a big table or whatever, and there's like three people, and you're trying to pick something up, and there's someone just standing there kind of watching it, and you're like, why is this dude not gonna jump in and take a corner? Like there's four corners and there's three of us. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. We're like, hey, bro, can you grab the corner? Like don't be that person. And if someone does have to ask you, hop in without question. You know, this week I think about someone, find someone, pray for somebody, call somebody, invite somebody to church, encourage someone, write them a note, whatever it may be. Carry your edge of the mat, because 2000 plus years later, that mission hasn't changed. There's still people who need Jesus. There's still roofs that need to be broken through. There's still mats that need to be carried, and there's still miracles that are waiting on the other side of faithful friendship and loving Christians and brotherhood. So I really hope that, as we close, that you really do dwell on these things and think about these things and think about that person that you've given up on or you're close to giving up on, and reach out, pray, whatever you think needs to be the next step, take it. And as always, the last handful of episodes, I want to close with some reflection questions that you can take with you. As I always say, if you're driving in the car, speak it out loud. If you're at home, maybe write them down. Or if you just want to listen and kind of reflect on it on your own time, I just want to give you some things that you can kind of take into the rest of your week. So, number one is think about who carried you when you were in that moment where you were struggling, where you felt paralyzed, where you felt overwhelmed. Who prayed for you when you didn't even know they were praying, who refused to give up on you, who answered those late night phone calls or called you, who challenged you when you were, headed in the wrong direction, who loved you when maybe you weren't very lovable. I know we've all been there. Who introduced you to Jesus or helped you come back to him. Take a minute this week, think about those people and thank those people, and then think about how you can be, that person for someone else. Sometimes the greatest way to honor those people who have helped carried you is to become someone who carries others, that follows in their footsteps. Number two, who is on your mat right now? So again, like I said earlier, not five people, 20, just one. What name immediately comes to your mind during this episode? I'm sure there's somebody that pops in your mind, maybe a sibling or a parent or a child. If you're a little older, maybe you've, you know, severed that relationship with your child has been severed a little bit, a coworker, a friend, someone you've given up on, someone you've been praying for years and you're kind of tired of it. Someone who walked away from God, whatever it may be. And maybe, I don't think like that person right now that pops in your mind, that's not a coincidence. I think that's, you know, God or the Holy Spirit using this episode or just using your own thought process to tell you that that person matters. That person needs you and needs, more importantly, Jesus in their life. Okay, number three, what roof is standing between them and Jesus, right? And it's different for everyone. Like we said earlier, addiction, church hurt, anxiety, disappointment, all those things that we talked about earlier. So ask what's standing in their way and how can I maybe help move that to the side? How can I break through that roof so that they can feel, that access to Jesus again? Number four, are you willing to pay the cost of carrying someone? Look, when I say all these things in this episode, it's not easy, right? Carrying people can be exhausting. It can be inconvenient. It's emotional. Sometimes they reject your help or ignore your call or disappoint you over and over, and you can wonder if it's worth it. And maybe sometimes you have to carry someone a couple feet. Sometimes you got to carry someone a mile, carry somebody, a couple miles, and it can be hard. But those four friends had no guarantee that Jesus was going to heal their friend, but they carried him anyway. They broke through that roof anyway, and they were willing to see it through. So would you still carry someone even if the miracle might not come, which is easier said than done? Number five, have you mistaken introducing someone to Jesus for trying to become the savior, right? I think that one's self-explanatory. I don't need to jump into that very much, but just remember it's not your job to heal that person. It's just to bring them to the healer. Number six, are you making room for for hurting people, or are you a part of the crowd, right? As we talked about earlier, are you, again, maybe not intentionally, but maybe take a good look at the life and ask yourself, maybe like, am I just coming to church, enjoying the sermon, and going home? Are you looking for somebody? Maybe you can't think of, maybe someone isn't coming to your mind, like I said in a prior question. Find somebody. There's always somebody at service on Sunday that needs a helpful hand in some way, a helpful word, a scripture, a prayer, whatever the case may be. Number seven, if someone looked at your life, would they know what or who you are carrying? If you think about what's on your calendar, your bank account, text messages, your prayers, your conversations, your weekends, would someone be able to tell that you are intentionally helping people get to Jesus or not? Be honest with yourself about that question, because that's hard. Does your life revolve entirely around yourself or helping other people get to Jesus? Last one. If you are the one on the mat, what do you do next? Maybe this whole episode you've been thinking like, I can't carry anybody right now, Chase. Like, and maybe that's because you're the one that needs to be carried right now, and that's okay. If you're exhausted, if you're angry, if you're grieving, you know, I hadn't experienced anything like what I experienced this last year with three separate situations. And this year was hard because of those situations, but also because I just wasn't used to this type of grief and grieving and pain of family stuff and other situations. And, I had never been in this extended period of time where I just felt like I needed to be heard and be listened to. Cause I do feel like lots of times I can be the one that is listening or trying to help or taking other people's burdens on. And maybe I was the one that needed to be on the mat and I was being prideful, right? And I felt that tension a lot this past year of, man, am I being selfish? I said a number of times to my sister this past year of like, man, I just feel like I don't want to make this all about me. And, she could continue to tell me like, sometimes it's okay for it to be about you. Sometimes it needs to be about you. That's why you have family. That's why you have friends. And obviously, not 100% of the time. You want to be there for the people in your life too that need to be the one on the mat and you can help carry them. But it's okay if you're the one on the mat at certain points of time. So don't be prideful and not let people carry you when you need to be carried. So the final challenge is this week, don't be just inspired by the story and wonder about it, but like live it, pick up the corner of someone's mat, call, text, pray, be present, because the miracle in Mark 2 didn't begin when Jesus healed the man. It started with the hearts and the faith of those four friends, ordinary people that decided that someone else's needs were more important than their own comfort, their own time, whatever the case may be. And I hope that we follow in their footsteps this week. So I love you guys. Thank you for listening. I know this is a little bit long. Remember that we will have a guest in the next couple of weeks, so make sure that you keep tuning in. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below. That will help us grow. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. Share with your friends. Share with your enemies. I will take any followers I can get because I want everyone to hear these things. I really want to continue that prayer of, man, I really hope at least one person listening is helped in their faith, is feeling encouraged by the end of these episodes. And as always, please reach out if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have disagreements, if you just need someone to listen to you, especially this episode. If you feel like, man, I need to be carried, but I don't really have anyone to carry me, contact me and I could do my best to share with you what I know, and maybe get you connected with someone that knows what you're going through. Or if I know what you're going through, I can be there for you and listen and try to be that person that helps carry your mat. And so I love you guys. I thank you for the support. I thank you for all the encouragement that y'all have given me this past year, and for those of you that I've known forever, for all the support that you've given me as friends, as families. So I will see you next week. And as Jordan always says, I'm out.